Have you ever stared out into the darkness and felt, with an absolute certainty, that what you could see with your eyes was the most insignificant part of what was actually there? We live our lives on the surface of a deep ocean, convinced the surface is all there is. I'm here to tell you about a scientifically tested method, a disciplined practice, that allows you to quietly, intentionally, leave the surface and explore the worlds that lie waiting in the deep. If you've ever felt that call from the deep, that whisper of a hidden reality, then your soul is already looking for this door. Subscribe and join this journey. It's time to learn how to open it. Part 1. The air out here has a presence. During the day, it's a dry, shimmering heat that you can see rising from the earth. But at night it changes. It becomes cool and thin, and it carries the scent of sagebrush and dry dust, the smell of an ancient, sleeping land. The silence is the other thing you notice. It's not an absence of sound. It's a presence. It's a silence so profound that you begin to hear things you wouldn't normally notice. The low hum of your own nervous system, the whisper of the wind curling around the corner of the house, the impossibly distant cry of a coyote. It's a silence that strips away the noise of the world and, if you let it, the noise of your own mind. It leaves you feeling exposed, raw, open. I came here to find this silence. For years, I lived in the heart of the city, immersed in a constant roar of traffic, sirens, conversations, and notifications. A world of overwhelming sensory input. But my whole life, even amidst that chaos, I've carried this persistent, unshakable feeling that there was another layer to reality, running parallel to our own, just out of sight. It started when I was a kid. I used to lie in the grass in my backyard, staring up at the clouds, and I would get this strange feeling of homesickness. A longing for a place I'd never been. Sometimes, I'd close my eyes and feel like I could see the layout of the entire neighborhood, not as a memory, but as a living map. I could feel the presence of the creek behind the houses, the location of the old oak tree in the park, all at once. I told my parents once, and they smiled and told me I had a wonderful imagination. I learned to call it that. Imagination. A daydream. But the feeling never left. It was the sense that the physical world was a kind of projection, a beautiful, intricate, but ultimately transparent screen. And that behind the screen, unseen worlds were humming with life and information. I would see a historic building and feel an overwhelming wave of sadness, a ghostly echo of events my history books never mentioned. I'd look at a stranger and feel a flash of a life I couldn't possibly know. These weren't thoughts. They were feelings, raw and unfiltered, that seemed to come from outside of me. I, like most of us, had no framework for this. My culture hadn't given me the tools or the language to understand these experiences, so I filed them away under unexplained, and tried to focus on the real world. But the real world started to feel less and less real. The more I focused on the tangible, the more I felt like I was starving for something I couldn't name. It was a hunger for meaning, for connection, for a map of the true territory, not just the cartoon version we're all given. This hunger is what drove me to this desert, to this silence. It's what pushed me to seek out the strange, the anomalous, the things that don't fit neatly into our scientific materialism. I wasn't looking for a belief system or a religion. I was looking for a tool, a practical, repeatable method to consciously and safely explore that world behind the screen. I wanted to see what wasn't there with my physical eyes. And that's when I found it. Not a belief, not a fantasy, but a protocol. A discipline, born in the most unlikely of places, that offered a key to the unseen worlds I had been sensing my entire life. Part 2. The discipline I discovered is called remote viewing. And the first thing we must do is clear away the fog of misconception that surrounds that term. When most people hear words like psychic or clairvoyance, their minds often jump to images of crystal balls, tarot cards, and vague, untestable predictions. It evokes a world of belief, of faith, of gauzy, New Age sentimentality. Remote viewing, as it was originally developed and as it is practiced today in its purest form, is the antithesis of all that. It is not a belief system. It is a structured, rigorous, and often tedious protocol. It's a trainable mental martial art. Let's define it. Remote viewing is the practice of seeking and describing information about a target, a person, place, object, or event that is inaccessible through the known senses. The key words here are practice and describing. It's not about guessing the identity of the target. It's not about receiving a finished picture in your head, like watching a television screen. In fact, if you get a clear picture of a red barn, you are almost certainly wrong. That is your analytical mind, your ego, jumping in to create a story from the raw data. The actual process is about learning to bypass the analytical mind and access the subconscious, which seems to have a direct, non-local connection to the universal information field. The remote viewer learns to report only the raw, fundamental sensory data as it comes in. They report textures, like smooth, cold, metallic. They report colors, like yellowish-green, and a flash of silver. They report sounds, tastes, and smells. They describe basic shapes and dimensions, what are called gestalts. Hard, flat, rectangular object. Soft, biological, squishy. The viewer's job is to be a good court reporter for their own subconscious, writing down only the evidence, no matter how strange or disconnected it seems, without trying to be the judge and jury that declares what it all means. The analysis, the process of putting the puzzle pieces together, happens much, much later. This distinction is critical. It's what separates this discipline from almost every other psychic or intuitive practice. It's rooted in a scientific understanding of how the mind works. The developers knew that the ego and the analytical mind are the source of the noise that drowns out the subtle signal. The entire structure of the protocols is designed to systematically dismantle the dominance of that analytical mind. It's a trick, a kind of mental sleight of hand you play on yourself, to allow the quieter, deeper part of your consciousness to speak. So, when we talk about this, we are not talking about a magical power you are born with. We are talking about a latent human ability, an innate sense that has been obscured by our modern, noisy, left-brained world. It's an ability that can be reawakened and honed through disciplined practice, just like learning to play a musical instrument. It is the science of seeing the unseen. Part 3. My own journey into this world was born of frustration. I read countless books on spirituality, consciousness, and the paranormal. They were filled with inspiring ideas and incredible anecdotes, but they were almost all devoid of a practical how-to. They told me that the unseen worlds existed, but they didn't give me a reliable map to get there. It was like reading a series of beautiful travel brochures for a country you had no way of visiting. I felt a sense of spiritual consumerism. I was collecting beliefs, but I wasn't having transformative experiences. It was all intellectual. I was still on the surface of the ocean, just reading about the deep. Then, through a series of synchronicities, a random podcast, a footnote in a book, a late-night internet search, I stumbled upon the declassified history of the U.S. government's psychic espionage programs. At first, I was deeply skeptical. It seemed too conspiratorial, too much like fiction. But the documents were there. Thousands of pages, released under the Freedom of Information Act, detailing the work done at Stanford Research Institute, SRI. As I read through the dry, clinical reports, the scientific papers, and the session transcripts, a profound sense of validation washed over me. It wasn't the spy aspect that gripped me. It was the fact that here, in the heart of the military-industrial complex, a group of serious, credentialed scientists and ordinary, grounded individuals had spent over 20 years and millions of dollars developing a rigorous, protocol-based system to do the very thing I had been yearning to do: explore reality beyond the five senses. This wasn't a religion. This wasn't a belief system. This was an applied science. It was a technology of consciousness. The feeling I had as a child, the sense of an unseen, parallel reality, it wasn't just my imagination. It was a verifiable human faculty, so potent that the government had tried to weaponize it. This discovery electrified me. It provided the framework, the map I had been searching for. I dove into learning the protocols, specifically a method called Coordinate Remote Viewing, CRV, which was developed at SRI. My first attempts were, of course, a disaster. My analytical mind, my ego, was still the roaring tyrant in my head. I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to get the target right. And so, I failed again and again. My session transcripts were filled with my own thoughts, my own memories, my own guesses. They were pages and pages of noise. The breakthrough came when my instructor told me something that changed my entire approach. He said, "Stop trying to see the target. The target is a distraction. The real target of your session is your own mind. The goal is not to describe the picture in the envelope. The goal is to perfectly describe what is happening in your own awareness, moment by moment, without judgment." This reframed everything. It was no longer about being right or wrong. It became a pure mindfulness practice. I started to notice the difference between a thought, which feels like it originates in my head, and a true sensory impression, which feels like it arrives from an external source. I learned the subtle, internal signature of my own analytical mind trying to create a story. And slowly, painstakingly, I learned to set that story aside and just report the raw, weird, wonderful data. The first time a truly inexplicable and accurate piece of information came through, a specific smell, a strange sound, an abstract shape that was a perfect match to the target, it was the most profound, aha, moment of my life. The travel brochure had become a passport. I had finally left the surface. Part 4. To truly grasp the power and credibility of this discipline, you have to understand where it came from. It wasn't born in a peaceful ashram or a university philosophy department. It was forged in the crucible of the Cold War. In the early 1970s, American intelligence agencies were in a state of high paranoia, and for good reason. The Soviet Union was a black box, a closed society that was incredibly difficult to penetrate with traditional espionage. But reports began leaking out from behind the Iron Curtain, strange, unsettling reports of the Soviets investing heavily in what they called psychotronics. They were allegedly using psychics to do everything from tracking the movements of American nuclear submarines to attempting to telepathically influence the minds of Western leaders. The CIA, faced with this psychic gap, reacted with a mixture of terror and pragmatism. Was it all just disinformation, designed to make them waste money and resources? Or was it real? They couldn't afford to guess wrong. So, they launched their own secret programs, farming the research out to the brilliant minds at Stanford Research Institute. This wasn't a fringe operation, it was a serious, top-secret endeavor. The early results were so astonishing that the program continued to be funded, year after year, for over 2 decades, passed from the CIA to the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Army. The list of documented, declassified successes is stunning. One of the most famous cases involved a viewer named Pat Price. In 1974, he was asked to view a secret Soviet site at Semipalatinsk. Price, from a room in California, drew a detailed diagram of a massive, multi-story gantry crane moving on rails over a large metallic sphere. He described its function in technical detail. The CIA analysts checked their files. They had nothing. No satellite photos, no human intelligence on the ground confirmed the existence of such a structure. Price's data was filed away as an interesting, but unverified, anomaly. It was only months later, when a new KH-11 reconnaissance satellite finally passed over the area, that the photographs came back. And there it was. The gantry crane. The sphere. Exactly as Pat Price had drawn it. He had seen it with his mind before the billion-dollar satellite could see it with its lens. But it wasn't a story of unbroken successes. There were failures, too. Times when the viewers got it wrong, when their own mental noise drowned out the signal, or when the data was too ambiguous to be useful. The program had its fierce skeptics within the government, most notably at the CIA, which remained deeply ambivalent about it. In fact, it was a famously negative and, many argue, deeply flawed report commissioned by the CIA in 1995 that ultimately led to the program's declassification and public termination. The report, written by a known debunker, concluded that the phenomenon was not robust enough for reliable intelligence gathering. Yet, the raw data, the thousands of pages of successful trials, told a different story. When the program was declassified, it was like a dam breaking. The knowledge, once the exclusive property of the intelligence community, flowed out into the civilian world. The very scientists and military viewers who had pioneered the practice, people like Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, Ingo Swann, and Joe McMonigal, were now free to speak, to write, to teach. Remote viewing transitioned from a classified weapon of espionage into a powerful tool for personal and spiritual exploration. What was once used to find Soviet submarines was now being used by ordinary people to find lost keys, to help with medical diagnoses, to explore creative potentials, and, most profoundly, to ask the biggest questions of all. Who are we? What is the nature of reality? And what is our place in the cosmos? The sword had been beaten into a plowshare. The tool of spies had become a key for seekers. Part 5. So, we come back to the central mystery. How? How is it possible for a human mind to access information that is shielded by distance, time, and physical barriers? The honest answer is that nobody knows for sure. We are still like children poking at a strange, new technology. But the leading theories, born from the intersection of the experimental data and the frontiers of theoretical physics, are mind-bending and beautiful. They point to the idea that our fundamental assumptions about reality are wrong. One of the most powerful concepts from quantum physics that seems to resonate with the remote viewing phenomenon is entanglement. Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance. It's a proven, experimentally verified fact that two particles, once they have interacted, can become linked, or entangled. If you then separate these particles, even by millions of miles, and measure a property of one particle, like its spin, you will instantly know the corresponding property of the other. It's as if they are still connected, communicating faster than the speed of light, which according to our current understanding of physics, should be impossible. This spookiness suggests that on some deeper level of reality, the two particles are not separate at all. They are part of a single, unified system, and the distance between them is an illusion of our limited, classical perception. Now, what if consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon? What if, as some physicists theorize, our minds are fundamentally entangled with the universe? If that were true, then the separation between your mind and the target, the gantry crane at Semipalatinsk, is an illusion. On a deeper, subatomic, informational level, you are not separate. You are already there. The information is not over there. It is also holographically right here. The challenge, then, is not to travel to the target. The challenge is to filter out the overwhelming information of your immediate environment so you can perceive the information of the supposedly distant one. This is where the practical techniques come in. The most well-known is coordinate remote viewing, CRV, the structured, multi-stage process developed at SRI. The coordinates given to the viewer are arbitrary. They are just a focusing tool, a way to formally task the subconscious. The process then unfolds in stages. In stage 1, the viewer just reports the most basic gestalts. Is the target natural or man-made? Is it land, water, or structure? In stage 2, they move to sensory data, colors, textures, sounds, smells. In stage 3, they begin to sketch the basic shapes and dimensions. This gradual, structured process is a form of psychological trickery. It keeps the analytical, left-brained ego busy with a simple, repetitive task, like a child being given a coloring book. While the ego is occupied with the structure and the rules, a little door opens to the subconscious, the right brain, which can then begin to pass its raw, holistic perceptions through without the ego immediately slapping a label on them. This is the essence of sensory override. You learn to systematically quiet the 5 senses that are screaming, "You are in a room in the desert," so you can begin to perceive the subtle sensory data coming from the target. It's a profound act of mental discipline. You are consciously shifting your awareness from the local to the non-local. You are telling your own mind, "Be quiet. I'm listening to something else." When you can achieve this state of inner stillness, the information begins to flow. And in that flow, you don't just perceive distant objects. You begin to perceive the very fabric of consciousness itself, the unseen worlds that are always present, just beneath the noisy surface of our ordinary lives. Part 6. Once you begin to master this skill, once you learn to reliably distinguish the signal from the noise, you realize you've been given a key. But it's not just one key to one door. It's a master key that opens a staggering number of unseen worlds, worlds of information that exist parallel to our own. The most obvious and practical of these is the world of lost information in the present moment. We've all experienced the maddening frustration of losing something important: keys, a wallet, a sentimental piece of jewelry. We search frantically, our analytical mind trying to logically retrace our steps, often with a rising sense of panic that only further clouds our memory. Remote viewing offers a completely different approach. Instead of trying to think where the object is, you can view it. You quiet your mind, set the intention to perceive the sensory information surrounding the lost object, and you listen. You might get an impression of cold, dark, metallic, and the smell of leftover food. Suddenly, an image flashes in your mind. You had put your keys down on the shelf in the refrigerator when you were unloading groceries. It's not a memory you are accessing, in the traditional sense. It's as if you are asking the universal field, "Show me the gestalt of this object," and the field responds. This application, while seemingly mundane, is often the first miracle that convinces a new student that this is real. It's a direct, verifiable experience of accessing information that was inaccessible to their conscious mind. But the key opens doors to worlds far beyond the immediate and the personal. One of the most fascinating is the world of the past. History, as we know it, is an incomplete story, written by the victors, pieced together from biased accounts and a scattered handful of surviving artifacts. It's a blurry, low-resolution image. Remote viewing, some of its most advanced practitioners claim, allows for a form of historical exploration. Viewers have been tasked with viewing historical events, the building of the Great Pyramids, the daily life inside a Roman legionary fort, the experience of a specific battle. They are not seeing the past like watching a movie. Instead, they report back sensory data, emotional tones, and schematic-like drawings. They might report the smell of ozone and limestone dust, the sound of thousands of voices chanting in unison, the overwhelming feeling of collective purpose and divine connection when viewing the pyramids. They might report the taste of gritty bread, the smell of unwashed bodies and wood smoke, and the feeling of disciplined boredom punctuated by terror when viewing the Roman fort. It's as if every event, every strong human emotion, leaves an energetic residue, an informational imprint in the fabric of space-time, and a trained consciousness can tune into that imprint and read it. This isn't a replacement for traditional archaeology and history, but a potential new tool to augment it, to ask new questions, and to experience the human past with a startling, empathic immediacy. It transforms history from a dry collection of facts into a living, breathing, accessible world. And then there is the strangest door of all, the world of the abstract. Viewers can be tasked with targets that are not physical objects or events, but pure concepts. View the nature of creativity. View the concept of compassion. The results are stunningly beautiful and poetic. For creativity, a viewer might report a feeling of a dam breaking, a chaotic flood of bright, clashing colors, the sound of disharmonious music slowly resolving into a beautiful chord. For compassion, they might report a warm, golden light, a feeling of dissolving boundaries, the sensation of feeling another's pain as your own, but without the suffering. They are perceiving the archetypal, energetic structure of the concepts themselves. They are accessing a world of pure meaning, a platonic realm of ideas. This demonstrates that the reach of our consciousness is not limited to the physical. We can explore the very architecture of our own inner worlds, the unseen landscapes of thought and emotion that define our human experience. The potential is limitless. You are not just a resident of the physical world, you are a citizen of a vast, multi-dimensional informational cosmos. Part 7. While the ability to explore these unseen worlds is exhilarating, the most profound transformation that occurs through this practice is not external, but internal. The true unseen world you gain access to is the hidden landscape of your own self. This discipline is, at its core, a powerful engine for personal growth and the accelerated development of intuition. We live in an age of information overload, yet we suffer from a crisis of wisdom. We are constantly seeking answers outside of ourselves. From experts, from algorithms, from gurus, from the endless scroll of social media. We have been conditioned to believe that we are incapable of generating our own wisdom, that our own inner voice is unreliable and should be ignored. Remote viewing is a radical act of rebellion against that conditioning. It is the process of learning to trust your own perception again. This trust is built, session by session, as you learn to differentiate the voice of your ego from the whisper of your intuition. Your intuition, that quiet, non-linear, holistic knowing, is the signal. Your ego, with its fears, its biases, its endless internal chatter, is the noise. The practice of remote viewing is like taking your intuition to the gym. With every session where you successfully set aside the noise and report the signal, you strengthen that intuitive muscle. It grows more reliable, clearer, and faster. This enhanced intuition begins to bleed out into every corner of your life, dramatically improving your decision-making. You start to develop a feel for situations. You walk into a business meeting and you can sense the hidden agendas, the unspoken anxieties, the true emotional tone of the room, which allows you to navigate the situation with much greater wisdom. You're considering a major life choice, and instead of being paralyzed by analysis, you can quiet your mind and perceive the feeling tone of each potential path. One path might feel expansive, bright, and resonant, while the other feels constrictive, dim, and dissonant. You learn to make choices not just based on what makes logical sense, but on what resonates with your deepest, most authentic self. This practice also unlocks a wellspring of creativity. Creativity is not about fabricating something from nothing. It is about making novel connections between existing bits of information. Since remote viewing gives you access to a much broader field of information, your creative potential explodes. You can view a problem from a completely new angle, perceive a solution that your logical mind would never have conceived of. You can tap into archetypal themes and imagery for your art, your writing, or your music. You begin to see yourself not as a generator of ideas, but as a channel for them, an antenna for the creative impulses of the universe itself. This is an incredibly liberating shift, freeing you from the pressure of being creative, and allowing you to simply be a joyful participant in a creative flow that is much larger than yourself. Ultimately, this all leads to a profound expansion of consciousness. As you repeatedly experience the fact that your awareness is not confined to your body, your entire sense of self begins to change. The rigid boundary between you and the universe starts to soften and dissolve. You begin to understand that you are not a skin-encapsulated ego, but a node in a vast, interconnected web of consciousness. This isn't an intellectual belief, it becomes a lived, felt reality. And this shift is the antidote to the fear, alienation, and loneliness that plagues so many of us. You realize you are never alone. You realize you are a part of everything, and everything is a part of you. This is the ultimate unlocked potential, the direct experience of your own true, magnificent, and unbounded nature. The unseen world you were seeking turns out to be your own soul. Perfect. Let's bring this journey to its conclusion. Here are the final 3 parts of the script, designed to inspire the viewer to take their own first steps while grounding the practice in responsibility and a sense of wonder for the future. Part 8. So, as you sit there listening to this, a part of you might be feeling a deep sense of resonance, a flicker of an ancient memory. Another part, the skeptical, conditioned part, might be asking, but what do I do? How do I begin this journey for myself? This is the most important question. This knowledge is useless if it remains theoretical. It is meant to be experienced. And the good news is, you don't need to be recruited by the CIA or have a PhD in physics. The path into these unseen worlds is accessible to anyone with a sincere heart, a curious mind, and the discipline to practice. The first step is to become a discerning student. The moment the Stargate program was declassified, a veritable cottage industry of psychic training sprang up. And like any field that deals with the invisible, It is filled with a mixture of genuine experts, well-meaning but misguided amateurs, and outright charlatans. It is crucial to seek out reputable resources. Look for instructors who were part of the original scientific programs or were trained directly by them. Look for training that is protocol-driven, that emphasizes the structured, tedious process, not just going with the flow. Be wary of anyone who promises you instant, godlike powers or who charges exorbitant fees for secret knowledge. The real secrets are not for sale, they are revealed through dedicated personal practice. The foundational texts, the declassified documents, the early papers from SRI. Much of this is available in the public domain for you to study. The second step is to create a space for the practice. This is both an outer and an inner act. Find a physical space where you will not be disturbed, where you can be in silence for 30 or 60 minutes at a time. This is your personal laboratory. The inner work is even more critical. You must begin a practice of quieting your own mind. For many, a simple mindfulness meditation practice is the perfect entry point. Learning to sit, even for 10 minutes a day, and simply watch your thoughts come and go without getting attached to them is the fundamental skill. This builds the mental muscle required to separate the signal from the noise. You cannot hear the whisper of the cosmos if your own mind is screaming. And finally, begin to practice with a sense of playful detachment. The biggest obstacle for any new student is performance anxiety, the desperate need to be right. You must let this go. Find a friend to act as your beeper, someone to select targets for you. Use a free online tool that provides random target photos. Approach each session not as a test, but as an experiment. An adventure. Your only goal is to be a good witness to your own awareness. Keep a detailed journal of every session. Note your impressions, your sketches, and then, after you get feedback, note the correlations. Don't focus on the misses. Celebrate the hits, no matter how small. Did you get the right color? Did you sense that the target was outdoors? Did you draw a line that matched the shape of the target building? These small successes are the trail of breadcrumbs that will lead you deeper and deeper into the forest of your own potential. The journey into the unseen begins not with a giant leap, but with a single, curious, and courageous step. Part 9. Before you take that first step, there is a crucial conversation we must have. It's a conversation about ethics, about responsibility, about the sacred trust that comes with this ability. It is not a game. It is a tool of almost unimaginable power, and like any such tool, it can be used to build or to destroy, to heal or to harm. The question is not can you access these unseen worlds, but should you, and how? What is the moral compass that must guide your journey? The first and most inviolable principle is that of privacy. The ability to perceive things non-locally comes with the immense temptation to invade the private, mental, and emotional spaces of others. This is the shadow side of this ability, the path of the psychic voyeur. To use this skill to spy on a partner, a business rival, or a neighbor is a profound ethical violation. It is an act of spiritual violence. The genuine practitioner understands that the principle of do no harm extends to the non-physical realms. The goal is to cultivate a deep respect for the sovereignty of every individual's consciousness. Your own journey of awakening should never, ever come at the expense of another's right to privacy and peace. The second principle is that of intention. As we've discussed, the universal field itself seems to have a built-in ethical filter. Your intent acts as the tuning fork that determines which frequency of information you resonate with. If your intent is pure, driven by a desire to learn, to help, to grow, to be of service, the signal you receive will be clear and resonant. If your intent is muddied by ego, by the desire to show off, to gain power, to prove you are special, the signal will be hopelessly corrupted by the noise of your own ego. This provides a powerful, practical reason to constantly check in with your own motivations. Before every session, you must ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is my deepest intention? This self-interrogation is not a limitation. It is a purification process that makes you a better, clearer instrument. Finally, there is the principle of humility. This ability does not make you infallible. it does not make you a god. You will have sessions that are brilliantly clear, and you will have sessions that are a complete miss. You will have days where you feel totally connected, and days where you feel nothing but your own mental static. To walk this path is to develop a deep humility in the face of the vast mystery of consciousness. It is to understand that you are a student, always. This humility protects you from the spiritual ego, the trap of believing you have all the answers. It keeps you open, curious, and teachable. Remember, the ultimate purpose of this journey is not to accumulate secret knowledge or to gain power over others. The ultimate purpose is to dissolve the illusion of your own separation, to experience your profound connection to all life, and to use that experience to become a more compassionate, wise, and loving human being. That is the only goal that truly matters. Part 10. For centuries, humanity has looked up at a sky like this one and felt a sense of awe and a sense of separation. We saw ourselves as small, fragile creatures on a lonely outpost, looking out at a vast, empty, and silent cosmos. We built great telescopes to probe the darkness, always looking out there for answers, for life, for meaning. But the great paradigm shift, the secret that was hidden in plain sight within the declassified files and within the teachings of the ancient mystics, is that we were looking in the wrong direction. The universe is not just out there. It is also in here. The cosmos is not something you look at. It is something you are a part of. The human mind is not a candle flickering in the wind of a vast darkness. It is a holographic fragment of the entire universe, containing all of its information, all of its mystery, and all of its potential within it. The future of human perception, the next great leap in our evolution, will not be the result of a new technology we build with our hands. It will be the result of reactivating the technology we were born with. Imagine a world where this ability is as common as literacy. Imagine a world where children are taught not just how to analyze the outer world, but how to perceive the inner worlds. Imagine a humanity that can no longer hide from its own interconnectedness. Where a politician could no longer lie, because the people could feel their deceit. Where a corporation could not pollute a river in secret, because thousands of minds could perceive the harm being done. Where empathy is not a sentimental ideal, but a direct, sensory experience. It would be the most profound revolution in human history. A revolution of consciousness itself. This may sound like a distant dream, but it begins here. It begins with you. It begins with one person at a time making the courageous choice to reject the limitations they've been taught, and to embark on the inner journey to discover their own true nature. You are standing on the shore of an infinite ocean. You have spent your entire life being told that you are only allowed to wade in the shallows. But you were born to be a deep-sea explorer. The unseen worlds are not a fantasy. They are your birthright. They are your home. And they are waiting patiently for you to decide you are finally ready to come home. Your consciousness is the greatest unexplored territory in the universe. If you feel ready to begin your expedition, don't let the moment pass. Subscribe. Stay close. The map is within you, and the journey of 1,000 worlds begins with a single, quiet